Justin, are you sure you don't want to sing? Darn it. Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. My name is Crystal Romero. I'm a mother, a retired Army Master Sergeant, a proud council member of the New Mexico League of United Latin American Citizens, 8057, and member of our Sisters Keeper movement, who is the original organizer of this nationwide rally. Before we get started, I have a couple of important announcements. Social distancing is encouraged today, as well as please keep your masks on, unless you're speaking. A little bit about our Sisters movement, our Sisters Keeper movement. This movement was originally started by a military sexual trauma survivor. Her name's Katie Chorback. She's my battle buddy. She's been campaigning for this for over 10 years. It was her idea to start this nationwide rally, and as her sister in arms, I was very proud to support her. So again, thank you for being here. Special guest joining us today is Senior Field Rep Sofia Sanchez on behalf of Representative Deborah Holland's office. Lieutenant Colonel Pat Gaston, did I say it right? She's the president of the Women's Veterans of New Mexico. We've got LULAC Council 8057 member and past state director Dennis Montoya. LULAC Council 857 vice president and New Mexico State Deputy Director for Youth Josie Marujo. LULAC Treasurer Valerie St. John. LULAC 8057 Chair for the Vanessa Guillen Committee, Ms. Alma Alvarez. Representative Ben Ray Lujan was unable to join us today. However, he did send a letter that will be read by Ms. Marujo. We're all here today to talk about the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act. It's a transformative piece of legislation that will significantly change the way the military handles cases of alleged sexual harassment and sexual assault. But before I get started, I'd like to tell you who Specialist Vanessa Guillen was. She was a beautiful young lady who her dream was to serve in the armed forces. She would have been 21 years old this past Wednesday, September 30th. She was an active athlete. She ran track. She was very charismatic, and later lived out her dream and raised her right hand and said, "I will serve my country." She was a daughter, a sister, a teammate, and a friend. Her charismatic personality was liked by so many. She was extremely close with her family. She would often drive home from Killeen, Texas to Houston on the weekends to spend time with them, which is a couple-hour drive. They knew when she didn't return phone calls that something wasn't right. What happened over the next several weeks would disgust you. Her family was lied to, cover-ups began to take place, and Vanessa's family was treated with so much disrespect that I'm embarrassed as a veteran. The lack of concern from her chain of command as to where her whereabouts were just showed how much they didn't care. Vanessa's life mattered. Her dreams of serving her community mattered. Upon hearing the news about her disappearance, I, along with tens of thousands of others, knew exactly what was happening and became infuriated, only to not be surprised when her remains were found on June 30th, more than 2 months after she had gone missing. She had been beaten to death by a hammer inside of an arms room. And for those of you who don't know what an arms room is, it's basically a vault where all of our weapons Excuse me. Our weapons and all of our equipment is kept. She was beaten to death by one of her fellow service members. Her lifeless body was then shoved into a black container, taken to a secluded area where her body was dismembered, burnt, buried, and covered with cement. Prior to Vanessa's disappearance, she had reported to her mother and sisters that she was being sexually harassed, but feared retaliation if she reported. This all too dangerously familiar story brought so much to the surface for me. I was never sexually harassed in the 16 and a half years that I served in the military, but I was a sexual assault victim advocate. I was also the Joint Substance Abuse Program Coordinator, member of the Safety Council, and a platoon sergeant. When soldiers came to me and stated that they need help but didn't want to report out of fear of retaliation, I was able to use my position as a substance abuse coordinator to help them get into rehabilitation where they were able to talk to civilian licensed mental health workers about why they were there and why they had turned to drugs and alcohol. I see the wind showed up today. Victims of sexual assault are 3 times more likely than the average person to suffer from depression and 6 times more likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Some sexual assault victims try to cope with traumatic memories and unwanted anxiety or depression through substance abuse. In fact, sexual assault victims are 13 times more likely to abuse alcohol and 26 times more likely to abuse drugs than those who have not been sexually assaulted. So as you can see, we have a serious problem, and our men and women in uniform deserve better. This is unacceptable, and I stand here before you today as a woman, as a mother, as a veteran, and I'm asking for your help. I'm asking for the help of the American people. This bill will attack other areas of concern like suicide and drug and alcohol abuse as well. The military has approximately 500,000 active duty military personnel. 15% of that, which is about 75,000, are women. 1 in 4 women experience sexual assault throughout their enlistment. 1 in 100 men experience sexual assault. Over 20,000 military personnel reported being victims of rape, sexual assault, stalking, harassment, or domestic violence just last year. Of those, only slightly more than 300 reports resulted in formal criminal action, and only 105 of those resulted in an actual conviction. These trends are far worse than what we've seen in the general public. I can't stress the importance of this bill. This bill has been a long time coming. Representatives Jackie Spear and Representative Mark Wayne Mullen have been trying to do this for 10 years. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Senior Field Rep, Ms. Sofia Sanchez from Representative Deborah Holland's office, who will go more in depth about the bill.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sofia Sanchez, and I am the Senior Field Representative here in the district for our Congresswoman, Deb Holland. She sends her regrets that she couldn't be here today for this important advocacy that you all are doing, but I'm here to read a statement that she sent. I want to say a heartfelt thank you to every one of you here today fighting for justice for Specialist Vanessa Guillen and far too many other service members who have faced sexual violence in our armed forces. The leaders that we entrust with our young servicemen and women failed to protect Vanessa. which means we all as Americans failed to protect Vanessa. I join you all in saying we must fight to get her family justice and make the real changes to see that this never happens again. Put simply, I will join all of you here today to call for the swift passage of the legislation that bears her name. HR 8270, remember that number when you reach out to your family and friends to tell them to call their congressperson to support this bill. I am one of the original co-sponsors of this legislation, which will do so much to protect our service members from a culture of sexual assault and restricted accountability that instead empowers survivors to seek justice. The bill will take the decision to prosecute sexual assault away from military commanders and put it in the hands of an independent prosecutor. A change so obvious, but one which the lead author of this bill, my chairwoman, Representative Jackie Spear, has been fighting for years. This bill will finally make sexual harassment a standalone crime, which unbelievably right now is not. It will create a confidential reporting system outside of the chain of command, so young people like Vanessa would have been able not to worry that she's choosing between reporting crimes against her or her career. And this bill will launch a crucial government study on how the different military branches handle missing service members, so we can truly fix the unacceptable broken system that led to Vanessa's family being forced to endure an absolute nightmare to find her. I don't have the words to express how horrible this must be for the families of service members like Specialist Guillen, lost to violence in a very place they should feel so safe as anywhere on the planet. It took the brutal murder of a model soldier, an incredible young woman, to bring the attention of our nation to the conditions and culture that had spiraled out of control at Fort Hood. But it's not just that post where the pervasive culture of sexual harassment and violence inside the U.S. military is eating away at our national security and killing the careers of far too many of the powerful women we so desperately need to help lead us into the future. Vanessa and any woman who chooses to serve our country should be able to serve without fear of sexual harassment and rape. But that's not the reality. This issue has persisted for so long that it is still today rare to speak to any female veteran or current service member who has not experienced sexual harassment or worse. The reports of systematic issues of sexual harassment and violence in our military are not new either. We learned just how little commanders were doing to protect our servicewomen nearly 30 years ago during the tailhook scandal. It took great courage for those victims to come forward and rightfully shocked our country to learn that 83 women were assaulted over 2 days of a single conference of military officers in Las Vegas. 30 years later, and hundreds of policy changes later, we are still seeing this crisis in our armed forces. This is completely unacceptable, and I promise to all of you and to all of the people of my district, I will continue to fight and fix this for good. To keep the same promise we made to every mother, father, who trust us and our military to look after their children. We've talked to far too many mothers and fathers who've lost a daughter, a son, their Marine, their soldier, sailor, or airman in the very prime of their life. One is too many, and Fort Hood has lost more soldiers to homicide than combat zones since 2016. During that time, there have been 159 non-combat deaths of Fort Hood soldiers, including 71 suicides and 7 homicides. 5 of those this year alone included Vanessa. Beyond just this bill we were here to support today, I worked with my colleagues to pass the National Defense Authorization Act and penned a letter just last week to ensure it includes the provisions I wrote to support and hold perpetrators accountable to protect service members from retaliation. Alongside my colleagues of the Armed Services Committees, I will fight to see that our country will honor its promise to protect everyone brave enough to volunteer to protect us and the freedoms we cherish. Thank you all so much for being here. Again, the Congresswoman sends her regrets that she couldn't be here, but just know that our office is always here to support you.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. At this time, I'd like to introduce LULAC Council Member 8057 member and past state director, Mr. Dennis Montoya.
The wind might blow you away.
Yeah. Muchas gracias. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dennis Montoya. I'm one of several past state directors of New Mexico LULAC, and thanks to each and every one of you for your presence this morning. And to those of you who are watching by social media or on any of our television stations, thank you as well. I'd like to start this morning by thanking all veterans who are here, or also those who are not here, for your service. Thank you, Master Sergeant, for your service. Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel, for your service. And thank each and every one of you who have served in our country's armed forces. I'm the child of two veterans. Both my mother and my father served in the military. And I can tell you that the military has been a great boon, a great benefit to our country, not simply in defending us, but also in promoting some of the ideals that the organization I represent stands for. Egalitarianism, equality among races. We had to do that to win World War II. The upside of the military is that it is a way up and out for many of our people coming from impoverished circumstances, minority and other. But the downside of the military is that it is very reluctant to deal with internal problems. Any of you who have served in the military know that it's a great big family, and that is promoted to members of the military, the ideal of being part of a great family. Well, sometimes within families things go wrong. Sometimes within families there can be inappropriate behavior. And this has happened in our military establishment, and it's gone on for years. Women serving in the military, as has been pointed out this morning, have been subjected to an inordinate amount of harassment. Certainly not always arising to the level of what happened to Vanessa Guillen, who served her country admirably and suffered a fate that no one deserves. But as has been stated here this morning, it's rare for a woman to serve in the armed services and not be subjected to some form of hostility. This needs to end. Not only women, but members of minority groups, anyone who might be different, cannot be as comfortable as others serving in the United States military, among other things, because of the chain of command. The military lives, eats, and breathes chain of command. And this is good. It's necessary for military function. But the other side of it is that it can be used to cover up wrongdoing. It can be used to discourage reporting. And the Vanessa Guillen Act will put an end to this. Will depenalize going outside the chain of command to report things like sexual harassment. It's necessary. We are entering into a new age of transparency in this country. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but we are. We are finally cleaning up some dirty, dusty areas of our closets and our floors that should have been swept out years ago. We're addressing problems that have lingered in our society since the Civil War. It's all coming out, and the military is no exception. The military is part of our society. I want to encourage those of you who have not joined to join New Mexico LULAC. I think we have some membership forms here. We welcome you. You don't need to be Latino to join LULAC. All you have to do is support our mission. We need your strength. We need your efforts. We need numbers. So we have forms here this morning. Before you leave, if you have not joined LULAC, I encourage you to stop by one of our tables and sign up. We're inexpensive. It's only a few dollars a year. And we will welcome you and we will put you to work. Seeking justice. I'm about to sit down, but before I do want to say a few words about LULAC. LULAC has been in New Mexico for almost 100 years, about 91 years, since 1929. 1929 is the year that LULAC was first formed. LULAC is the League of United Latin American Citizens, and we dedicate our efforts to promoting social and economic justice, education, and civil rights of the Latino community. So that's who we are and what we're about. We encourage you, if you've not already joined, to join us, and thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you, sir. Our next guest speaker is LULAC 8057 Vice President and New Mexico State Deputy Director for Youth, Josie Marujo.
Those are hard acts to follow. Thank you all for being here. I know that COVID has created a tremendous challenge for many of you watching us at home, and we thank you for tuning in, and we thank all of those here today for joining us. I am proud and honored to represent the League of United Latin American Citizens. As you heard, we've been here a long, long time, and we do many, many things in our community that benefit our community. I am a member of LULAC Council 8057, and I serve as a vice president. All of LULAC, from our national president, Domingo Garcia, to every LULAC member across the United States and Puerto Rico, we stand in solidarity with Vanessa Guillen, with you, Crystal Romero, and with all of those working to get this act passed. We need your help. We're going to keep asking for your help because that act won't pass without the help of our community. Call your congressman. So far in New Mexico, we already have Ben Ray Lujan, the Honorable Ben Ray Lujan, that signed on. We also have, of course, Deb Halen that signed on immediately. On the 16th of September, she signed that. We still need Xochitl Torres Small. So those of you watching that are in her district, and if you're not in her district, call her. Tell her we need her help. Doesn't hurt to call Senator Udall and Heinrich, because eventually they'll have a say in this. So that's the kind of activism we need from all of you, and that's why we're here today. Now I'm going to read a statement from our New Mexico State Director, Mr. Fred Baca. He regrets that he also cannot be here today. But this is his message to you. The tragic and violent death of Vanessa Guillen at Fort Hood, Texas should never have happened. Vanessa's untimely death broke our hearts and was a wake-up call for all of us. It brought us to the realization that there is an immediate need to change the laws and policies referring to the bullying, sexual harassment, and sexual assault that occur on our military bases. Ya basta. Many of you here have relatives or friends who have currently or are serving currently in the honorably in the military. We owe all America's soldiers in the military a safe and secure environment free from any hazards that may endanger their precious lives. LULAC has been in the forefront since the day Vanessa disappeared. The LULAC Killeen, Texas Council and our national officers responded immediately, forming local search parties and helping the family in their efforts to get information from the Army officials. LULAC then demanded a meeting with the Secretary of the Army, Kevin McCarthy, and other high-level Department of Defense officials in Washington, D.C., where our national office is located. As a result of LULAC's demands, a meeting was granted, and we now have LULAC appointees serving on investigations taking place at Fort Hood. Many changes will take place, brothers and sisters, and we will ensure that the public is informed of the outcome of those investigations. That is really important. I'm just going to interject, because without the power of our LULAC national officers, we probably would have had an internal investigation, and we can't have that. We have to know the truth of what's happening in these military bases. That is critical to making change. I just spoke to one of our committee members of LULAC this week, and they were again meeting with the Army, with the Undersecretary of the Army. So we're committed to this act, and we hope you all are as well. I'll continue on with that statement. Additionally, Vanessa's family worked to develop the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act of 2020, H.R. 8270. The act, if passed, will make major changes in how the military deals with sexual assault and harassment. We must continue to work together to get this legislation passed. In closing, I am unable to be with you today, but please know that New Mexico LULAC and all our members support the efforts to protect our soldiers, whatever it takes. On behalf of LULAC, we also salute and thank those currently serving in the military and those who have served. We owe a great debt of gratitude to National President Domingo Garcia for taking quick and decisive actions to guarantee that this matter does not go unnoticed. A huge thank you to you, retired Master Sergeant Crystal Romero, for all your hard work. Because of Crystal, Council 8057 became involved. The Vanessa Guillen Mural Committee, on behalf of our council, I also want to thank you all. We have Isabel Zamora here from our council. We have Dorothy Garcia from our council, and all the others, Valerie St. John. Thank you all for working hard with all of us to get this done. We'll talk to you in a little while about the other stuff we're doing. Let's pledge, he says, to continue to work together to make sure that Vanessa did not die in vain. That was from our state president, Fred Garcia. I'd like to read a letter from Congressman Ben Ray Lujan, who also could not be here today. And for his representative, we thank him for stepping forward and signing. Dear friends, thank you for attending the event today to show your support for U.S. Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen, her loved ones and family, and sexual assault victims and survivors. The murder of Vanessa, who was a 20-year-old specialist serving her country at Fort Hood, was an unconscionable act of violence. Congress must take action to address the crisis of sexual harassment and assault in our armed forces. We owe our service members a debt of gratitude for their willingness to serve our nation, and that includes keeping them safe throughout their service. That's why I am proud to co-sponsor the I Am Vanessa Guillen Act to help bring justice to Vanessa's family and all survivors. I will continue working with all my colleagues to build support for the legislation and address justice in the military. Thank you again for showing your support for this legislation and honoring Vanessa's life. Please know that I hear you, and I look forward to partnering with you all to advance this legislation. Thank you, Ben Ray Lujan, Member of Congress. In closing, thank you again for being here. As Vice President of our council, I commit to all of you and to you, Crystal, that we will continue to fight. We will continue to push that act, and we hope that you all join us in that effort. And thank you all for coming out today and joining us.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next guest speaker is retired Lieutenant Colonel Pat Gaston she's the president of Women's Veterans of New Mexico.
Buenos dias. Good morning. I came here this morning to give a voice of my organization, Women Veterans of New Mexico. We represent over 17,000 female veterans throughout the state. We understand all too well sexual harassment that goes on in all the military branches and military academies. We understand why it's underreported. We understand the lives that are forever affected and shortened by harassment. Because we understand, we support the I Am Vanessa Guillen Bill. We also encourage any woman or man who has experienced sexual harassment to seek spiritual or mental health support, to regain your power. It was never your fault, and it does not make you weak as a person. Regain your power. And I say to you that are here, if you know somebody who served in the military and this happened to them, let them know support is out there and they can regain that power of their lives. If you're a civilian, the same thing applies. There's a lot of support, there's a lot of help out there. So as the president of our group, I would like to say that we are definitely behind this act. Thank you so much for bringing this here.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here today. The tragic death of Army Specialist Vanessa Guillen has brought into stark focus our country's failure to properly deal with the ongoing crisis of military sexual trauma. It affects thousands of women and men in uniform, but only a small percentage of those crimes ever result in real consequence for those responsible. 1.5 million veterans are currently receiving disability payments for military sexual trauma. Billions of your taxpayer dollars are paying for those disability payments. Billions of dollars are earmarked every year for disability payments. There's a lot of my brothers and sisters in arms that are hurting, that have been suffering in silence for years. It's not what we signed up for. Again, I was not ever a victim of assault in the military, but as a victim advocate, I carry a lot of that pain. I'd like to thank New Mexico LULAC for amplifying my voice today. I'm also a very proud member of the 8057th Council. I'm excited to join this family. I think we're going to do really great things in this community. I'd also like to thank Michelle Velarde for being out in the streets with me for days, talking to strangers, handing out flyers, making good trouble. That's what a battle buddy does. To all my friends, my children, who have put up with me for the last 6 months, I appreciate you girls, and I love you. I'd like to thank Nick Lehman for being here today. Without your support, I would not have gotten video coverage to stream for those who were not able to be here today. all my friends and family who have supported this and supported me since day one. I appreciate you sincerely. We have t-shirts for sale. This is part of a fundraiser that will help support our mural, which I would also at this time like to introduce Ms. Alma Alvarez from the 8057th LULAC committee. She's going to talk to you all about the mural project that LULAC is spearheading. Ms. Alvarez.
Buenos días a todos. Good morning to everybody. Well, to talk about the mural of Vanessa Guillen, one day I was watching the news, what happened. I follow all this family because I'm Hispanic like me, and I feel so sorry in my heart about what happened. And I see a lot of the states doing a mural. And I was thinking, why Albuquerque cannot have a mural of Vanessa Guillen when in Mexico, most is Hispanic. So I'm a part of the Concilio 8057, and I talked to Josie, and then we proposal and LULAC, and the Valerie, Josie, and I personally in charge to present the proposal to the here, run, and they accepted. And my dream is to have the mural from Vanessa Guillen at Dolores Park. Why? Because Dolores Huerta, she's one of the activists, and she's from New Mexico. And what can I be in the park at Dolores Huerta? So now we start this project. We're gonna need a lot of help. We're gonna need a lot of those artists to paint, can be in contact with us. And so we start. And then we want to all your support on this project. Because you know what? Vanessa Guillen is not the first one of what happened. And we know that a lot of, some of the family, I always say behind the stage, didn't say anything. So now is the time to speak up. Okay? So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In closing today, I want to touch on some topics that Mr. Montoya brought up. He's correct in saying that the Army is the largest family in the United States. It's one of the reasons why I joined. I came from poverty. I came from foster care. Joining the Army was my way of making a better life for myself. I personally know what rape does to a person, because I'm a product of rape. So I know the psychological damage that it does to a person. Our men and women in uniform don't deserve this treatment. The fact that I'm here today begging for the American people to please help our men and women in uniform is disheartening. We have to be there for them because they raise their right hand and they say, I'm going to be there for you. And they show up. Here in the state of New Mexico, we have over 2,800 New Mexico National Guard Air, and Army service members who at any time will drop what they're doing, kiss their families goodbye to report to state duty. We have Kirtland Air Force Base here in New Mexico, in Albuquerque. We have to stand up and be there for them, for every service member across the U.S. We sacrifice so much, and we're not asking for pity. We're just asking for some support. I'm asking you for some support. It's that important. Again, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And for those of you who are tuning in, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being generous with your time. At this time, we'll close up, but if there's any questions, again, if you'd like to purchase a t-shirt that will go toward our fundraiser that will contribute to the mural that we're building, that we're having painted in the South Valley, I encourage you. If there's any questions at this time, I'm happy to answer them, or any member of the New Mexico 8057 LULAC Council is happy